Today we will be telling the story of the princess who was betrayed by her uncle. In this story, we will find dragons, witches, princes, and queens. So, without further ado, let's begin. In a distant kingdom, there was a king who could not have a son or a daughter. Upon this happening, his brother was very confident that soon his brother would die and he would become the king. But one day the queen gave the king good news, which was that she was pregnant and that there was a beautiful little princess in her belly. This king became very happy and joyful, as he wished with all his heart to have a daughter. When the long-awaited moment arrived, the princess was born. Upon seeing this, the king's brother realized that he would not become the king but would remain just another in the kingdom. So he plotted a plan before the princess was born to get rid of her once she was born. He knew he could not kill his niece, because he did not want his niece's blood to stain his hands or for it to be known that he killed his niece, so he devised a new plan. Which was to go to the outskirts of the kingdom where a wicked witch lived, who was said to have a dragon. The king had expelled that witch, because she was a bad person and did not want her to harm the people of the village. With these characteristics, we know that the witch was not a good person, but the princess's uncle did not care at all. All he wanted was to get rid of his niece, to be able to become the king. When all this happened and the girl was born, there was a great celebration in the kingdom. Everyone was eager to see the princess. The long-awaited day for everyone in the kingdom arrived. The king would present the princess to the whole town. Carrying her in his hands, he showed her to the people. At that moment, the witch who had disguised herself as a nanny took out her broom, flew, and snatched the princess from the king's hands. So the king, very distressed, immediately set out in search of the witch, without knowing that it was all a plan of his brother, who had already prepared several traitorous soldiers. The brother wanted them to capture the king. But something went wrong. The king received an arrow in his heart and died. Although his brother did not want that, it happened. When he learned of his brother's death, who was the king, he immediately gathered all the kingdom's leaders and proclaimed himself king. He also made an agreement to leave the queen in the kingdom, but with no authority. She could only live and eat in the castle. He had also made an agreement with the wicked witch that she could return to the city whenever she wanted to buy whatever she wanted, as long as she disguised herself and did not come. Today we will be dressed as a witch. He assured her a payment each year she had the princess. He assured her that she could be inside the kingdom since he, as the former king, had forbidden her entry. But she had the obligation to keep the princess away from everyone. Although everyone knew the princess was in a cave, guarded by a dragon, and many princes had tried to rescue her, they had not been able to free the princess, as the dragon ate all the princes who tried to free her. Over time, a prince from a distant kingdom heard the story of the princess locked up by the dragon. He said, "I will go and rescue that princess, as if I do, I will marry her." Shortly after, he prepared and invited several of his friends to accompany him, but upon hearing that he was going to face the dragon, they said no, they were too afraid. Without knowing that the prince had a magic flute that, when it played, made the dragon's ears hurt and distracted them, the prince took his bow, his arrow, his sword, and, especially, his magic flute, Sergio. For many days, he traveled through the forests, through other kingdoms, until he reached a very high mountain. After some time searching, he found the door where the princess was locked up. Shortly after entering the cave, he realized that many people had been there before, due to the large number of shields, spears, and corpses. And the prince was very scared, but still, brave as always, he courageously continued with the princess's liberation. Upon entering a little further, he noticed the dragon's large size. When the dragon saw him, he said to himself, "What a good new meal. Today I will feast on this prince." Without knowing that the prince had the flute that would hurt his ears, the dragon came towards the prince with all his strength. The prince played his magic flute, and to the dragon's surprise, it caused a strong pain in his ear. The dragon roared in pain and confusion, giving the prince a chance to swiftly draw his bow and shoot an arrow directly into the dragon's eye. The dragon howled in agony and thrashed around, causing rocks and debris to fall from the cave ceiling. The prince quickly rushed to where the princess was held captive, untied her, and helped her out of the cave. The princess was overjoyed to see her rescuer, and as they made their way out of the cave, the prince held her hand tightly to protect her. As they emerged from the darkness of the cave, they were greeted by the bright sunlight and fresh air of freedom. The princess looked at the prince with gratitude and admiration, knowing that he had risked his life to save her. Together, they made their way back to the kingdom, where the people rejoiced at the return of the princess. The news of the prince's heroic deed spread far and wide, and he was hailed as a brave and noble savior. The princess and the prince fell in love during their journey back to the kingdom, and when they arrived, they announced their intention to be married. The former king's brother, who had usurped the throne, was outraged at the princess's return and the prince's success in rescuing her. But the people of the kingdom, who had suffered under his rule, rose up against him and demanded his removal from power. The queen, who had been banished to the castle, was reinstated as the rightful ruler of the kingdom. The prince and the princess were married in a grand ceremony, and they ruled the kingdom together with wisdom, compassion, and justice. The wicked witch and the dragon were banished forever, and peace and prosperity returned to the land. And so, the princess who was betrayed by her uncle found true love and happiness with the brave prince who had saved her, and they lived happily ever after.